but why can't you rewrite your story? Why can't you show up as the best version of yourself, or fulfilled, or a little bit more happy, right? It's like, oh no, I have to have this 9 to 5, or I have to do this. Okay, it's okay, but you can rewrite your story while you have your 9 to 5, while you're making things happen, right? And I feel that's the belief also that we have, is like, we can't, this is how it should be and this is how it's going to be. I'm not meant to have that. So I know you keep saying that because it's a reminder that we can rewrite our story no matter what chapter we're in.
But yeah, so I'm excited to talk to you. I know when we talked originally, I didn't really get a chance to get into some of this stuff with you because I had a lot of things going on in the background. But yeah, we're here today, so we'll see what we get into. If you want to introduce yourself and tell us who you are and preface the conversation, and we'll dive in.
Of course. Hi, I'm so honored to be here, Cody. Thank you for the opportunity. I have 2 women empowerment communities. So my name is Jeanette Miranda. I have rooted in her, and also the co-founder of Taboo Talks, Latina Edition. And my mission is to inspire, empower women to thrive in all areas of their lives. Because I believe that once we get married, I would say, to a certain role, we commit to it, and then we lose sight of who we are everywhere else, right? So it is important as women to have that foundation, the community, to support one another, and to know that no matter what you're going through, you're able to face it and you're able to break free from it. I'm also a mom of 2 handsome little boys that I adored. And going back and taking it back to my early ages, I was in the entertainment industry, where I was pursuing a whole different career in the singing, acting, modeling industry, where I really started that at a very young age until I became a mother. And that's when I was the founder of the 2 empowerment communities.
Okay. So this is interesting because you've mentioned this sort of a couple times now, which is this identity. Because you mentioned that I think you said when women, I can't remember exactly how you phrased it, but they lose their identity when they become married to a role. Was that how you phrased it?
And that
Yeah.
can be to any role, right? Like when we have a boyfriend, when we get married, when we have a career, when we have
Mm,
kids, right? It's like we want to give it our all, but then in the process, we lose ourselves because we want to be so committed, so faithful to everything that we do, that we
right.
lose track of, like, also pouring into our own cups and knowing our potential starts from within us. Like, we
Mm,
always attach everything we do to someone else, to a thing, or to a person. And my passion really is, because I learned that myself, is to dig deep, because that's really when you have the fulfillment, right? Of
right.
no one or nothing it's ever going to fulfill that passion of yours, or what was something we feel that we're lacking or we're missing. It's really because it comes from within us.
Mm. Yeah, that's a good way to put that, man, because we get so focused on doing the external thing that we lose that internal connection. Which really, I mean, you kind of have to ask yourself, how well can you do the external if you don't have that internal connection with yourself?
100%.
And it's crazy too, because this is something I don't want to say this is universal, but like I see this a lot in the entrepreneurship space, like especially entrepreneurs, people who create a business or a service, a product. They a lot of times create it out of nothing, out of an imagination or a thought or a desire, and it's very easy to attach our identity to that thing,
Yes.
to the success or failure of that thing. And it might sound like it's a good thing to attach it to the thing if it succeeds, but then it's like, well, your sense of identity or self-worth is only validated by the success of this thing. I mean, I think it sounds so sort of cliche to say start with yourself, like start with that connection with yourself. But I mean, that is important because I can't speak on being a mother, but like being an entrepreneur, you're going to fail, man. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to make failures. You're going to do things that don't work out. And if you have your sense of identity attached to that failure, um, it's like it's going to be devastating to you internally.
And that's what happens too, like you said, with entrepreneurship. It's that we're not worthy enough. We compare ourselves with others, right? Of like, we're
Right.
not far enough. Well, they were able to do it apparently overnight, right? Which is no such thing. But from people posting and what they're saying,
Right.
we start thinking, well, we're never going to get there. And then this also goes into like our personal lives, going through a cheating, a breakup, a heartbreak, right? We feel like, what did I do? What's wrong with me? What could I've done better? And it takes 2. but it's because we haven't done that inner healing, that inner work, that really we continue to put our worth in others. And going back to careers too, right? Once you have a 9 to 5, you get fired from your 9 to 5, you get laid off, you're like, oh, my life is over.
Mm.
It's not, right? It's just the beginning, but it's really how you look at life. And one thing that I love to share, and I just shared recently at a stage that I spoke on, it's, life is not happening to you, life is happening for you. And we always get caught up in why is life happening to me? Why am I going through this? I'm a great person. I'm a good wife. I'm a good daughter. I'm a good mom. I'm a good employee, but it's not you, and sometimes you got to learn over and over again and go through so many mistakes and so many challenges to build you. And I'm sure you can relate, especially in entrepreneurship, right? That you're like, man, I'm glad this didn't happen 2 years ago because my mind wasn't there. My mindset was not there. Or I'm in a better space now that I can handle it differently. And I feel like we all struggle with that. We just don't confront it. So we keep going through it over and over again.
Yeah, that's a really good point. What that makes me, and I've talked about this on the podcast before, but what that makes me think about is like when we talk about this identity, whether that's a mother or a father or an entrepreneur or whatever, and we take that identity with ourselves, like there are things that come with that identity. Like there's paths that, even though they're unique, they're sort of similar that we walk compared to other people in those paths. And it's like, if you tell yourself that if you have the identity that you're an entrepreneur, then that means that you can withstand and maneuver around the obstacles that you're inevitably going to face on entrepreneurship. Because it's like, I think that when we think of a thing or a career or whatever it is, we just want the outcome of that thing, but we don't think about what it takes in between the starting and end point of that. But it's like entrepreneurs, man, a lot of times are very resilient people because they just deal with so much stuff. So it's like if you have that identity, like I am an entrepreneur, I feel like you're going to get farther because you know what comes with that identity. You know what comes, and I'm sure the same is true with parenthood. Like if you say I am, a good mom or whatever, well, I'm sure there's times where being a mother is hard, you know. And so like if you have that identity, like I am, X whatever thing, it's like it's different when you have an identity versus you just want the outcome that the identity has attached to it.
I love that. You worded it perfectly. And I'm sure so many people can relate. It's just a matter of them unfolding that and understanding that. Because again, going back to social media, which is a great thing, it's a great tool that we have, but also nobody showcases the struggles, the tears, the heartbreaks, right? The discouragement, moments that they lost everything and they had to rebuild. They
Mm,
only do it once they make it to the top. Well, I went through this and that, and I had to rebuild over and over again. But what if you would have shared that journey? Who can you inspire? And I feel like a lot of people, especially when they're starting or they're in multiple roles, right? With the 9 to 5s, trying to launch a business, parenting, just trying to have their own personal life together, they feel like they can't do it because they don't have the time. They don't have the knowledge. And it goes back to our mindset, really, and digging deep again and understanding, like you say, your identity and where you stand so you know where you're heading. And that's important because then
yep.
we feel like, to me at least, what helps me is my time management of knowing, well, I'm a mom and I know I have to be a full-time mom because of my kids, the age they are. So what can I do to be successful in my business, pour into my community, do the things that I love, like being on here with you today, that doesn't affect me being a mom, right? And
Right.
I feel that's the challenge that we have too, that we want to do it all, especially as women, but we don't want to handle those tasks for anyone else. Of like, there is a time for sitting, there is a time for school, there is a time for bedtime. Like there are times that we need to put those structures in place.
Hmm. Yeah. Before we get too far away from this, I want to go back to the social media thing just for a minute because I think you're exactly right. I think that a lot of times, whatever it is, whether it's entrepreneur or parenthood or whatever, we see the successful side of that on social media. And I've talked about this a lot on the podcast too, but it's like I, social media can be great, man. We can connect with other people, we can learn, we can, do business, but comparing ourselves to that very small portion of somebody's life, it's like a very small percentage of that person's life. Like that's what we see.
Yeah.
And if somebody is like a mother or a parent or an entrepreneur and they see somebody else in that space, they're like, well, man, they've got it all figured out. It's working out well for them and it's not working out so well for me. So it must not be for me. I must suck. But it's like, dude, that like social media for most people is a highlight reel. They put the best parts on there. And if it's a business, like you don't see a lot of times the decade or 2 decades that it took to get to that point, you
No.
know? And so I just think, I think social media should be used to connect and not compare. Like we should not be, and I mean, everybody does it. I guess it's just innate. It's just human nature, but it's like we can't really compare ourselves to something that's fabricated on social media. And I made this point a while back. I think it's very detrimental, especially for women, because like, I think it's hard for women to see the beauty in themselves when the beauty of others is magnified on social media.
Wow, love that.
Like there's filters and there's all this stuff, and it's like nothing's written. There's Photoshop, and it's just like you're comparing yourself to a person who's like that what you're looking at is like 75% real. It's not even like 100%.
So sad, but so real, so true.
Yeah.
Especially as women, we struggle with that, the comparison, and not because I'm in women empowerment, and it's not about, bashing other women or talking bad about them, but it is true. Like if we can stand firm and really own, like, and embrace who we are, like how we look. Like there was a time that I couldn't, like I had to wear fake lashes because
Mm,
as a woman, I felt that that was my definition of beautiful. Like I
yep.
couldn't even be on here with you if I wasn't wearing fake lashes, right? Like I
Mm,
had to schedule my refill or schedule them in prior. Same thing with going to an event, going to a speaking engagement, going to a family gathering. That to the point that when I didn't have them on, I didn't feel worthy enough. And that's
right.
when he said, I did like an inner healing. I was going through my mental health. And I said, no, like that doesn't define my beauty, my confidence. I started embracing my own lashes, letting them grow. And now I love them, right? And people even acknowledge them. Oh my God, your lashes have grown. I love your mascara. But now I feel that when I wear fake lashes occasionally,
Hmm.
I can't wait to take them off,
Yeah.
because I've already learned to embrace that. And I think as women, we struggle with that, right? We're constantly like having to look, like you said, this perfect image of faking it or looking a certain way, but who are you lying to? Because it's hurting you inside.
Mm. How do you think it was like, how did that change for you? Like you said that you couldn't, get on this call with me without having the fake eyelashes. How do you think that was that changed? Like, how do you think it changed?
To me, it started as a process. I just had to show up without making excuses or having to look a certain way or having to feel a certain way. Because, for example, there's times that we're not going to want to show up. We still have to. And same thing with how we look, right? My hair is not always going to be perfect. My lashes are not always going to be on time
Mm,
to get them refilled. And I just hated the feeling of feeling pressure because I
mm,
had to look a certain way. Like if I wasn't in my image, right? My way. Like if I didn't show up here with lashes, full blown makeup, came from the salon with my hair done, I wasn't good enough. And I said I am. So I had to start changing that mindset that those things, those material things, so it doesn't define me, right? So
right.
I started building that confidence within me and just embracing it. I started wearing mascara little by little, even if my lashes were really destroyed because of the fake lashes. So I had to go through a process of healing with the lashes as well. Like we do our own inner healing. We had to go through that as well for anything, like the nails.
Yep.
Like this is the first time my nails are my nails because I used to wear fake nails as well because
Mm,
I went through a moment of eating, all my entire life eating my nails, and it was the nerves, right? And growing up in the household of always feeling nervous, feeling under pressure, so I had to just one day say enough is enough. And also because my boys are watching. I don't want them to feel that they have to look a certain way to fit in. And I think
right.
that's important because there's a lot of competition nowadays and a lot of you should look this way, you should do this, you should do that,
Yep.
but nobody really speaking the truth or embracing who they are.
Yeah, man, that's so powerful. I think like what a lot of people don't understand about what you just said is like trying to fit into these. I guess they're called. I guess it would be standards that are like determined by somebody else. You mentioned that you didn't really feel maybe authentic, like it wasn't really like who you were supposed to be, or you didn't really have that connection with yourself. But that's just one part of it, man. Because it's also like too, as long as you're in that cycle, you're gonna be if you're looking for that validation from an outside source, like you're gonna be almost like a slave to that outside source, whether that's a person or an institution or an organization, whatever it is, a culture. And so it's like it's like a cycle that keeps you trapped in it as long as you're in there, because you're trying to get validation from beauty or worth or talent or whatever it is from an outside source. And I don't think people realize that that is like that's dangerous, because you're basically living your life based on what somebody else says you should or should not look like or do or act or whatever. I mean, we have parameters on in society as far as like, laws, good and bad, but that's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about something that comes from a person, that they are determining how they should feel about themselves or how worthy they should feel based on somebody else's external standards. In this case, we're talking about beauty.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it also goes back to 100% to mental health. It really, in a way, hurt my mental health, which I didn't even know I was going through it, because I'm always uplifting, I'm always empowering others, I'm always showing up for others.
Right.
That when I find myself like in a space where I'm questioning my worth, or I feel like I'm not good enough, I'm like, that's not what I preach. That's not who I am. So there's something happening within me. And going back to that, it was my mental health, because I had to keep showing up. Like, again, I wouldn't even post on my stories if I didn't
Hmm.
have my lashes, if I didn't have my hair down, not in a crazy bun, right? And I'm like, but why? Why am I doing that to myself? Who am I trying to impress?
Yep.
Because even the people who were following me never even said anything against that. And then the days that I would show up without anything, they're like, oh my gosh, you're glowing. I love your face, how natural it looks without makeup. So those little things that I'm like, wow. So sometimes we're in our own head
Mm.
overthinking and thinking that we're always being judged. And that's another thing too, I feel like, with social media and cultural expectations, that we kind of limit ourselves because we feel that, well, they're going to judge us. Or the people I follow, the people I surround myself are always dressed up, right? Or their wives always look good. Or my friends always get themselves pulled together, even if they have kids. Why can't I? So it's a
Right.
constant comparison that also affects your mental health, which we don't talk about. So I feel
Hmm.
like everything is tied, right? Like you said, it's one
Yeah.
way or it's another. Like at the end of the day, it's digging deep, but also realizing that we're hurting ourselves in the process.
Right. Yeah, I mean, no, you're right. It is all connected. And I think this is like a real world example of what people mean when they say that like your internal thoughts determine your outside world.
Yes.
Because you mentioned something about like the story we tell ourselves, like what I can't remember exactly how you phrased it, but basically the story we tell ourselves about what we think we are experiencing outside of us. And like you could get down the rabbit hole of like the philosophy of like like what is real, what's not real, like what do we create our own reality or whatever. But it's like a portion of that is true, because we're basically just telling ourselves a story about everything that we think we're experiencing based on what our past experiences are. And so like if you like the I used this example before, but if you go into a coffee shop and somebody's having a bad day and they are rude to you, but you somehow take that as like you internalize that as that's like it's like a metric for you to judge your own self-worth based on this person's reaction. You're creating a story for yourself that has absolutely nothing to do with you. Like this person's having a bad day, but because of the story you're telling yourself about the outside world, you're internalizing that as if this has any weight. You know what I mean?
I
But it's
love.
like that's just like I love to hear you say that, because it puts a it explains that we do create our reality. Like I mean, the the physical world or whatever, I don't know about that, but like our experience of the physical world, like we kind of all we really almost do live in a simulation, because like what we tell ourselves about what we experience is what we experience.
Yeah. And it does affect us, but it's what we do in order, to make it better, to not let us get to us. Like you said, 100%. Like that was a perfect scenario, because I see that all the time, especially here in Miami. People are always cutting you in traffic.
Hmm.
So you get so mad and you're like saying the F word and you're like, but I don't say this, but it's pissing me off. And it's like, it's nothing to do with you, right?
Right.
They're going through something. And it's just realizing that, like, again, life is not happening like it's happening all around you, but it's not necessarily happening just to you,
Hmm.
right? And you have to snap out of it and realize that, people are going to have bad days. You're going to have bad days, but it's what you do in order to shift that.
Hmm.
And it's also the perfect scenario when like you have things planned out and something doesn't work out the way that you had it planned.
Hmm.
Usually people who are control freaks, right? That's it. It's the end of the world. But again, that is happening for good. See it from a different perspective. And I know it's easier said than done, but it's things that we need to learn along the way just to be happier in life. Because people
Yep.
always put the money symbol, right, of happiness. And it's true. Money does buy happiness. And I agree. It can buy many things. But you can have all the money in the world and still be unhappy because you're
Mhm.
still not happy with who you are, right? You're still going to have a grudge. You're still not going to be healed from a past trauma. You're still not going to have the courage to fulfill something that truly makes you happy because of society expectations or what you think you should be doing with this money or that. So I think that that is a constant battle that we live in regardless of where you stand in life. It's really changing that perspective to just be happy and be fulfilled in whatever area you are until you find that fulfillment traveling to your next destination.
Yeah, man, that happiness and fulfillment conversation, that's a deep one. You know, I think I think the difference is like happiness to me is like a transient thing, like it comes and goes. And I feel like if a person's motivated by happiness, they're ultimately going to end up in sadness because it's such a fleeting, like short lived thing. But you mentioned fulfillment, and that's a whole different thing.
Fulfillment, yes, because
Yeah,
happiness, I know it's going to be, like you said, agree. It's something that it's who are we lying to? We're
yeah,
not going to be smiling all the time and happy, but it's that fulfillment, right? And the
right.
seasons of life. Because that's another thing too, and taking it back. When I went from the entertainment industry, pivoting in the area, in the field, in the industry, and then becoming a mom, I had so many questions. I was confused. I had lost my identity. I was happy,
Mm,
right? We can't confuse that. I was happy. I'm blessed. But then I felt that fulfillment of me, of my personal growth, was not achieved. Like, what do I want to do next?
right.
Right. But then I had to learn that there's a season. And I was just happy in the season that I'm in, and fulfilled knowing that where I'm heading, it's 10 times better. And I
Mm,
feel that's where we lose ourselves, right? It's like you say, I want to write this book, and you write it. Okay, what's next? You don't get to really be fulfilled and enjoy that you just wrote that book and you launched it. It's like
right.
as human, I feel like we always want more, 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 more. And it's like, when is that cap of fulfillment? It's okay to want more, but not lose yourself in the process.
Mm. That's a really good point. I want to backtrack just for a second. The entertainment industry. What did you do like in the entertainment industry?
So I don't come from family of entrepreneurs,
Okay.
right? So to me, really, what got me into the entertainment was music.
Okay.
I felt that every time that I would sing, I would disconnect from the world that I was facing because I
Mm,
went through some trauma at home. Also, cultural expectations of go to school, find a 9 to 5, right? So have this world to them that I had to live in that I was like, I want so much more. Like, this is not really what I'm fulfilled in. So
right.
again, music started just what drive me, still does. And I got the opportunity eventually to get signed by a manager. I was going to get signed by Sony BMG. I was like around, I would say 17, 16. And I went through more trauma there because my manager then proposed to me and I said no. He says, if you don't marry me, you're not signing the record deal. And this is
Mm,
something I've never really opened about because, I've never dig deep to talking about my roots, where I come from, and how this passion within me started. But that didn't stop me. I kept pursuing my career because, of course, I said no. And I always reflect back of like, what if? But it's not who I am. So there was
right.
no such thing of doing that. Um, and then, I was always hesitant because even though I auditioned again for The Voice, I they called me back to meet the judges, and then I didn't show up because it
Mm,
goes back to our limiting beliefs. So that was always something within me, even though I wanted so much more. I always stopped myself because I felt like, what's my family gonna think? Like, who am I kidding me? Nobody in my family is a singer. Like, who am I, right?
mhm,
So then I went back to going to college and trying to do journalism because I loved the TV. I wanted to be out there, right? That was my passion. And that just shifted into the acting industry where I started pursuing acting roles, speaking roles, background, extra work roles, music videos. And that I did for as long as like for a long time. I still go back to it every now and then when I'm called for a good role or a good opportunity. Um, and then fast forward, I got the opportunity for WWE in 2017
Hmm.
because of my background, right? In acting, modeling, singing. They were like, we believe you'll be good for the show. And I have no wrestling experience. So I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, this is not happening. But I still went, I tried out. I got injured on my neck while I was at the tryout. And of course, I went home, I got some rest, and I found out I was pregnant. Fast
Hmm.
forward a couple months later. So then that's when my motherhood career started. And that's why I tell people, I've had to pivot, but then I lost my identity in the way because I was pursuing this unknown career of like, okay, acting, music, maybe wrestling, right?
Right.
And then I became a mom, which again, it was what I've always wanted. I wanted to be a mom.
Hmm.
But in that transition, I felt like I lost myself. And then I was a mom, I had my boys, and then a year and a half later I got pregnant with my second one. And then here it goes again, right? Of like learning motherhood and still committing to be a mom full time, that I didn't have time to think until
Hmm.
my kids got older, because now they're 5 and 6. And a couple years ago, I said, my kids are going to get older and everybody around me is moving on, right? Like they're doing what they're passionate about. They're in their careers, finding the fulfillment, but I'm a mom, but then what else am I? And I knew that so many women out there lose themselves in the process of, again, the title, whether it's motherhood, career, again, going to spouse, right? In a relationship, they put their worth in someone else, in a thing, in a place, in a person, that I'm like, I can't be alone. And then that's when Rooted in Her was, came to life, that I was like, okay, let's have this community. I started hosting events where I gather women sharing our story, because that's another thing too. I feel like at events, we tend to always sell a product or a service, especially in Miami. There's always a real estate event. There's always a mindset event. There's always something to teach you. But
Hmm.
very few people really share stories. And I feel that what connects us, but also that heals us in the process of knowing that we're not alone. So from events, it started the community of Rooted in Her, and then the Rooted in Her podcast. I started with a merch line too, with empowering gears and just really empowering women to reconnect with themselves and with the community of women out there that reminds them they're not alone. And then fast forward, I connected with my girl who presented me the opportunity. I had her on my podcast, just like you and I right now. And after, she was like, I have this vision that I would love to share with you. And that was Taboo Talks, Latina Edition. She wanted me to co-host it and run the show with her. And now that's turning into a business for us. So it's crazy how just life pivoting, sometimes again, going back to life is not happening, for you, it's happening to you. I mean, to you, it's happening for you. It's a reminder that we're going to pivot. We're going to go through transition. And not that the entertainment industry is in the back burner. It was an experience.
Hmm.
And it helped me really come out of a darkness area that I didn't even know that I was seeking in, right? And a healing area of my life that helped me become the woman I am today.
Hmm. Well, man, that's an incredible story.
I know it's a lot, but I wanted to kind of take you through like the beginning to like the now.
No, yeah, no, I appreciate it. I have so many questions. So, I guess maybe to go back to acting just for a second, like, so what I've noticed about like podcasting and the coaching space, because I have a mindset coaching business, eh, that's, at least for me, it's like that. There's a lot of my personality in that thing. That's kind of who I am. My landscaping company is not really. It's more like the service, although part of my personality is in the brand. But when you have something like acting, or you could say the same thing maybe about writers or musicians, it's like this person's career is like off of a character or a fantasy or something. I mean, maybe it's like similar to them, but more than likely they're playing a role or developing a character that's not really them. So, what's it like being in an industry, just an industry where you're basically creating something, a character, and bringing that character to life, and like that is the career? Because I just think about like, so Johnny Depp has always been like one of my favorite actors.
Yeah.
I think I think the reason is because he can bring these characters to life that like really honestly nobody else could like play these characters, you know. And I think that's what an actor is. Same thing with like a musician. They can tell a story in a way that resonates with you, you know, through sound and instruments and that kind of stuff. Like writers can bring stories to life. They can really a good writer can write a story and you'll forget that you're even reading it. Like it's like effortless to read it. So like what's it like just sort of being, I don't want to say fantasy, but like just being in that space of like basically bringing something to life that maybe is not you, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. And I was actually thinking of that the other day because I'm like, I've surprised myself getting into roles
Hmm.
that I didn't know I was capable of, right? Because people know me as like the soft girl, right? Oh, she's so sweet, she's so nice, she's, her heart is full, like all this amazing, beautiful comments and compliments I've received. But then when they see me acting in like a bad role or like an angry role, they're like, wow, I didn't know you had that in you, right? So to me, it's like we got to get into character, right? And one thing that really helped me was really getting to know the character. Like you said, you get lost
Hmm.
reading a book, right? Because you can feel like you're living this character's life.
Right.
And it was fun for me because when do you get to have so many multiple lives, right?
Right.
That you get to like be angry and be this mean person and then be running around from someone who's trying to kill you. And then like all these things that you don't really get to experience in real life. So to me, it was a lot of inner work actually that I had to do. There was times that I remember having this scene that it's really short, but my on the storytelling was my dad. I was young. I went to go to this party at college, and my mom said no. And of course I'm daddy's girl, so daddy said, yeah, I'll take you. My mom was like, no, 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 like you're not going. But yes, yes, yes. And I still get goosebumps sharing this. And my character, I had to get into this girl in college, pretty girl that she's trying to get her way and she's daddy's girl, and he's gonna take me. So I convinced my dad and he took me. And he took me, dropped me off. Everything was great. I had a great time. I'm calling him to pick me up and he never answered.
Hmm.
And my mom was blowing up my phone because I was having such a good time in my party that I never realized, never even picked up the phone. And my dad had an accident and died on the way
Oh
back.
wow.
And I had to get into this character of like, I felt like it was my dad, right? And
Hmm.
at the end, it really affects you if you don't really control those emotions and those transitions because I was like, I felt like it was my dad. Like, what if I would have done that? That's something you can't take back. So
Right.
I was crying, I was bawling. The director's like, wow, because I really got into character. And it's hard to do that because they always tell you also not to compare with real life, right? Like, if you go through a miscarriage, like I went, and my character went through a miscarriage, it can really affect you in your mindset. But it's again, transition of
Hmm.
knowing it's not real life but really getting into the character of being able to relate with others. And I think that's what really makes a character stand out,
Yep.
right? Of like, oh wow, I relate, like I can relate with him. Oh wow, that's screaming. They're really scared. So yeah, that really got to me and I was like, wow. So that was something within me that I didn't know I was capable of. But and it was early in my acting career that I developed and I learned that I had to get really into the character and dig deep, but I couldn't really compare it to real life. So it didn't affect me.
Yeah. Man, that's crazy. Like I wouldn't have thought it would be something that deep. Like I just thought, I mean, I don't know, you think about an actor and you think about like they're just having fun, you know, portraying this character on a screen or in a play or whatever it is, but it's like you don't really think that it's that deep.
No, and you might see sometimes because I used to be background extra too when I started, and some people will get mad because they're looking at the actor. They're like, "Oh, he looks so mean. He's not even saying hi to me." They're actually getting prepared for their script, and they can't get any distraction. Not saying that that's the case for everyone, but from my experience too, like I'm such a friendly person that I wanted to hug everyone. I wanted to say hi to everyone,
Hmm.
but I had to really be in the room. I had to be disconnected in order for me to get, especially if I had a speaking role, to get into characters, to go over my lines and my nerves. Because no matter how many times I've done it, even like music, nerves still get the best out of you. Even when I have to speak on stage now to empower women or empower an audience, I still get nervous, even coming on here with you, right? Until the first minutes that we get warmed up, that it goes away. And I'm sure you can relate, like it's
Yep.
normal, right? So that's another thing too. And I'm glad that you mentioned that because people don't really ask those kind of questions and they just assume, but it's a lot of work that goes into acting. Like all you see is like those few seconds in the movie, but there's so much more. Like Tom
Hmm.
Cruise, I admire him as an actor. He does so much, and the direction, that being a director, being part of the movie, being able to be the man that he is also on and off stage, like it's a lot. And people just only see the bad highlights and they judge based on that. But as an actor, there's so much more that we don't get credit for.
Hmm. This is really interesting, man, because I think about like, well, if if this is how it is when you're acting for a movie or a play or a script, like what if we just sort of acted our own character in life? Like what if we just acted as if our own hero or heroine? Like what if we just like, you know, were writing that script for ourselves and just sort of took that play for ourselves in our life? Like what would happen? You know,
So,
because
yeah.
you mentioned earlier about like limiting beliefs. I think you said you were going for an audition and you didn't feel like you could get it or whatever.
So I submitted the audio because it was over email, on their website. And then they're like, oh, your call back. We're going to be in Miami. You're going to go do your audition in front of the judges. And I was like, and I was preparing and everything. The day of, I didn't show up.
Hmm.
And it was just that voice within me of like, who am I kidding? And limiting beliefs of thinking I'm not capable of doing that. Or also like, what if I mess up? What if my vocals are not in place then and there and I'm embarrassed, right? Like we always have to think the negative of what if, what if, what if.
Yep.
And I feel that, people always say, because I did mention that part once and they're like, oh, but never say never. You can always go back. Absolutely. American Idol, The Voice, like, of course I can go back. But that sometimes there's opportunities that you have to take.
Hmm.
That it's not just like, oh, if it's meant to me, it's going to come. Like, how many more times is it going to come to you to realize that opportunity could have been for you? Right. Like, I've pivoted so much that now I'm a different stage. But then I wish I would have stepped in, even if I wouldn't have gotten the ticket. Right. But at least I had shown up. So that's why I said I committed myself that no matter what, moving forward, I will commit myself to going, even if I don't get called. Right. Because if I submitted myself, then I'm going to show up.
So this is, man, I hope I don't lose anybody right here, but so there's a theory that like time is not linear. Like we experience all things at once. We can just only experience it one phase at a time because of our limited human mind. But like you're having this conversation with me now, and I don't know what it was that you felt in that moment when you didn't show up. I don't know if you felt like fear or like, if you felt something pulling you to show up, but it's like you're having this conversation with me now. And it sounds like from that, what you learned is to not make that same decision again and sort of go for things in your life now, which is probably how you kind of built what you have going for yourself now. And so like, maybe it seemed like a failure in the moment, but like, had you not done that, maybe you wouldn't have started, what you started now, and you're going for all these different things and you're doing all these different things. So it's like, and this sounds crazy, but like, what if because I heard somebody on TikTok last night. I'm actually going to try to get her on this podcast. She was talking about this theory of time, how we all sort of experience things
Yeah.
individually, but it's happened like simultaneously. And so like, what if you having this conversation now, your prior self sort of feels that, you sort of feel that energetically, if that makes sense. And I know this is kind of getting, out there a little bit, but I mean, that's just crazy to think about. But at any rate, like you were able to take that and then, like I said, build what you have now because of that. And
100.
so,
But it
and
still haunts me though. And I'm not lying about it. Like it still takes me back of like, what if? And then I look at my life now, I'm like, well, I wouldn't have done half of the stuff I've accomplished.
right.
Maybe have even had my boys, right? Life has just been so different.
Hmm.
And this takes me to share with you. And I did share this with my girl Cynthia from Taboo Talks because we were in the conversation and music, right?
Right.
That's like, if you tell me what's the one thing you want to do, it's sing. That's like my passion, right? That's whatever I can be going through. That's the only thing that breaks free from whatever hurt, whatever I'm struggling at the moment. Um, and I remember that I went to a concert. I can't recall the person. I was very, very young. And they took, my mom took me and they asked, that you can ask her whatever you want. And it's like, oh, they asked her, my daughter wants to be a singer. What's your advice? And her advice was choose a different career.
Hmm.
And that never sinked in until like now that I'm older and I see really like the celebrities, what they go through behind the scenes, how some of them have really like lost their life because of mental health.
Right.
And now's when I realized maybe that's what she was trying to say, obviously, because I'm like, I love music. What are you talking about? Like you're a singer, right? But then seeing her lock herself back in her room by herself. And then
Mm.
I experienced that a while back where I got the speaking role and I had my own dressing room. And everything was fine. Yeah, sign here, do this, go in the dressing room and wait until you are called. And then I was separated from the crew that I was having a great time. They were like background extras. I was just laughing with them, having a good time. And then I'm just there sitting in the dressing room by myself. And that brought me back to that. Like, imagine me doing this every single day of my life. It gets lonely. And whether you have a supportive spouse or maybe you have a family, you have to break free time away from that too, which I get it if that's your passion, but it affects your mental health, milestones that you don't see, that you don't get to experience. So I felt so lonely and I feel like, okay, like I don't like being by myself, like
Yeah.
I want to be out there. I want to connect. I want to laugh with people. So that reminds me of like, okay, maybe for this time, this life, I'm not meant to be a singer, and I'm okay with that. But it's stuff that you have to go through to realize. Because I feel like sometimes we're like, oh, I wish I could do this and my life will be happier, like we discussed before, or be fulfilled. But you'll be surprised, that maybe what wasn't given to you was actually a blessing in
Right.
disguise.
Yep. Yeah, man, you couldn't have said that any better. You couldn't
Yeah.
have said because like I think so there's a law called the law of polarity, which is
Yeah.
like that opposites exist. So every good has a bad, every bad has a good. And you if we're going to go by like celebrities, especially musicians, I think a lot of those people, there are a lot of mental health issues in that industry, and so like, but I mean, I think also too, a person can be a singer or whatever without getting to that level to where there's that level of stress or commitment or whatever it is that pushes these people to that edge. Uh, but yeah, I think that's something that's really not talked about enough. And the same thing is true with like entrepreneurship. Like there's a cost and not just a financial cost, but there's a cost to being a successful business person. I mean, there's a cost to building a business. There's a cost, and you just have to I think you have to kind of weigh out what that cost is.
Yeah.
For a lot of entrepreneurs, it's a huge time commitment, energy commitment. Especially for me, it was like over a decade. It was like a decade of like just relentless, just pursuit of this thing, and it's still. And I mean, that's the thing too. It's not just like in the entrepreneurship space, there's a lot of talk of like building a thing, but it's like once you build something, you have to be able to maintain it. There's a gentleman, and I don't know his name. I saw a clip that he had. I think he wrote a book like in the 50s or something, and he was like he was one of the wealthiest people at the time, and he said that getting rich is easy, but being rich is hard. Like staying rich is very difficult, because I mean, it's I think it's easy for us to think about like we want, X life for ourselves, whatever that is. We want to do these things, we want to have these, but it's like I think having that and maintaining that are like two different things. And
Yeah.
I ask people all the time, I'm like, well, if you have these goals for yourself, if you have these ambitions, if you were given these things right now at this very minute, the way you are right now, could you sustain it over the long term? Like, could you build a legacy off of that? And a
Yeah.
lot of us, probably not.
Yeah.
So, I
Or
mean,
maybe you have your ego saying, yeah, 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 of course.
yeah.
No, like, no.
Yeah. Well, I
It's-
mean, you have to think about like, people win the lottery and a year later they're broke again because most people just simply cannot handle if 10 or 50 million dollars is handed to them.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
No, they want to think that they become millionaires and it's all about partying, right? And as a man, like having all these women and being able to have this mansion and afford all these cars. And there's so much more that goes behind it. And I feel also that's going back to our mental health. That's when we feel like when you don't have the money, remove the money. Who are you?
yep.
Do those people around you still want the best out of you? Do they care for you? Do they want to be around you? Or who were the people who were there from you from the beginning too, that we lose sight with now the new career, the new foundation that we have? So money, it's a really, I believe it's such a, like for us, right? Like it's a taboo topic. And that's why when Taboo Talks, Latina Edition, we talk about it because we don't really grow up talking about money or
Hmm.
finance. right? It's like if you are poor, you're poor, or rich, you're rich. That's it. Like
Yep.
there's no in between, right? And I feel like when people get money, especially those who've never had it, they just want to blow it up, like the lottery. That was a perfect example you gave. They just blow it up. And then they're like, well, what do you do with the money? No investment, nothing that you left behind. Like, what? No, I just spent it. I wanted to do everything that you probably never did in your childhood or you were planning on doing, but that's because you weren't prepared for it. Like you didn't
Mm,
have a plan for it. And I feel like, yeah, we all live through that, right? But money is such like a taboo topic. And then I'm glad you mentioned it too, because we feel that it, yeah, it is happiness. Again, it brings a lot of happiness in your life, a lot of things that it can buy for you, but then we lose ourselves
mm,
in the process. And we feel that we have money, we're rich, like not just rich, but like mentally, physically. And that's not
right.
true.
Well, I think unfortunately there's a lot of self-worth that's tied to money. You know, a lot of people have their self-worth tied to that. And I guess because it's something like it's tangible, there's a number amount. Like think about, so we have weight and we have height, we have age. Like those are numbers. You know, we have X number of followers on social media or X number of clients. Like these things are all numbers, but it's
Yeah.
like when it comes to something like self-love or self-appreciation or self-worth, there's not really a way for us to measure that other than how we feel about ourselves. And so I think people just think of something like money or friends or social media following or whatever it is. We want to attach a number to that. We're trying to attach a number to a feeling about how we feel about ourselves. And man, I
Yeah.
think some things just can't you can't just you can't describe some things with words. It's like I was talking to somebody about like love. Like love is a very powerful word, but
Yeah.
it's like love is a feeling and we try to put a word to that to explain what that is. And
Mm.
I think everybody honestly probably has a unique meaning of what love is. But it's like that's the best we can do is put a description to what that is to explain that thing that we feel. Um and I don't know, I think maybe like love is could be anything, how we feel about another person, how we feel about ourselves, but like maybe some of these things they're not really meant to have a description. They're just meant to feel like self-worth, how we feel about ourselves. We shouldn't really look for a bank account or a metric or some number to determine that. Like that's just something we feel. Like it'd be really difficult to describe to a person who can't see like what you see when you look out across the horizon or whatever. Like, I mean, it's just like something that you just feel it. But
That
I
is true.
want to backtrack for just a second. You were talking about we were talking about money. The You mentioned something there I wanted to follow up on. I can't remember what it was.
I know we're talking about everything.
Yeah, I know. Listen, man, sometimes I'll go off on like different tangents here, and I'm just kind of all over the place sometimes.
I
But
love
it's
it
just,
because we don't get to talk about those things. Like honestly, I've been in multiple podcasts and we don't really go dig deep, right? It's more about like
mm,
what you've done, what you've accomplished. Okay, call it a day, right? And I
yeah,
love this because really nobody has ever asked me, which I appreciate you for like my acting, the singing, like really digging deep to the person that I was before. And for anybody out there that might be going through it right now too, because you never know, right? To feel that they're not alone and things that we learn from one another, which I
mm,
think that's important too, to continue to learn from each other. So
yeah.
I love that.
Well, for sure, and I think the big takeaway there is like uh, you mentioned what if earlier, like but like what if we just played this on character for ourselves? Like whatever you think about it is for yourself, whatever that person you want to be in the future, like that ultimate version of that just kick-ass version of yourself. What if you just wrote your own script and just played that character? Like what
Yeah.
what would happen? Like honestly, how much would your life improve and the people around you would it improve if you just played that character out? I mean, it's just it's crazy, man. Because we, especially like men, young men, any men really. A lot of men are into video games. Like you're in a video game, you build a character up in this fantasy world. Like, what if you did that in real life? Like, what if you could just like, who's to say we can't really? Like,
That is so true. I agree with you. And that's why I always go like you keep saying rewrite your story. That's something with rooted in her. And now with Taboo Talks that we make sure that we say is it's never too late to rewrite your story.
hmm,
Right. Like we feel like again, we go to a certain age. Oh, I'm too old for that. Or been there, done that. Like, no, that's my past. It's not gonna happen. Um, who told you it can? maybe it's not the same. Obviously, you went through that for a reason, but why can't you rewrite your story? Why can't you show up as the best version of yourself or fulfilled or a little bit more happy, right? It's like, oh no, I have to have this 9 to 5 or I have to do this. Okay, it's okay.
Mm,
But you can rewrite your story while you have your 9 to 5, while you're
right.
making things happen, right? And I feel that's the belief also that we have is like, we can't, this is how it should be and this is how it's going to be. I'm not meant to have that. So,
Yeah.
and you keep saying that because it's a reminder that we can rewrite our story no matter what chapter we're in.
And see, here's the thing, and I'll say this and I'll get off this topic. But like we already do that with other people. Like we idolize celebrities, we idolize sports figures or whatever. And it's like, why do we do that? Well, because we admire those people because they have this life for themselves or whatever. But it's like that could literally be you. Like you could put that same energy towards yourself or towards the ultimate version of yourself. I don't know, man. It's just
It is true. It is true. And and I guess also it helps that we both do mindset and we've had to do a lot of like inner work and we kind of been through life and we've already seen the outcome and how we've been able to push through.
mm,
But with people I've spoken about, like my own clients, that they are just learning that they're like, yeah, no, for sure. Then 2 days later, they're back in the same boat, right? And
yep,
it's because us understanding that we are capable. It's not just a motivational speech here that we're saying you can rewrite your story.
right.
You can, but you need to grab the pen and start working on it, right? Like break
Hmm.
it into small tasks. Just really keep yourself accountable. Find yourself accountability buddy. You know, do like when I wanted to host my podcast, my Root and Her podcast, I've never done that. And I just got the cheapest course that I found from somebody that I follow. I started doing my own editing. I bought my own microphone on like Amazon, the cheapest one I found at the moment, right? And I just went for it and I launched my first episode and I did my own editing. And then after a couple, I hired someone, right?
Right.
But you just go for it. And then that made me feel so confident and so fulfilled that I did this and I didn't have to spend an arm and a leg and I didn't have to, like keep pushing it for later. So I
Hmm.
always tell people just go for it. Whether it's just writing a book, okay, then just start writing. Like, what do you have to do to write that book? What do you want it to be about? Who are you going to bring on board? What's the character, right? And I feel that's where we get lost is in the bigger picture instead of
Mm.
thinking about the small milestones to get there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the fact of the reality is that we're writing a story whether we like it or not.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
yeah,
you can
that's
depend on
true. We're
what story you write for yourself. Um, so I want to make sure that we have enough time to talk about this before we close. So, what do you've mentioned it a couple times? Is it rooted in her? Is that right?
rooted in her.
Okay.
Um,
And what is that?
So that's my empowerment community. I have an Instagram, I have a Facebook group, and that's to empower women to break free from limiting beliefs,
Mm,
to rewrite their story, to share their story. So I was doing monthly events. I had stopped last year, and now I'm relaunching. I actually have my next event now, May 12th. Um, and it's to just connect women, to bring them together, because I feel that's what we're lacking as women. We don't get to really feed from one another. We don't get to hear each other's story, each other's struggles, and collaborate and network because you never know that one opportunity, it's one door away,
mm,
right? It's one handshake away. It's just one connection away from maybe launching your business or launching your podcast or just having a sisterhood maybe that you've been needing. So that's my
right.
main focus of Rooted in Her and helping them with my mindset. And then Taboo Talks, it's co-hosting it with my girl Cynthia, where it's a YouTube channel that we invite guests, mainly Hispanic Latinas, to talk about our taboos growing up. And it's mainly a generational cycles of us growing up, whether it's about money, about motherhood, about dating, about sex, right? We talk about everything that we don't really ever speak about or we don't hear other people talk about. That
Right.
it does surprisingly help you heal and reminds you, wow, I've been there before. Like I'm not alone, or I struggle with this. How can I improve it? And it's going
Yeah.
back to rewriting our story. So providing that platform for women to get to rewrite their story and know that in whatever season they're in, they're not alone.
Man, I really appreciate that because
Mhm.
it's like it, the power of community is so powerful because like you probably don't have this problem in where you live. But in small towns, people who live in small towns, like it's very easy to feel sort of alone or by yourself because there might not be people who are on the same mission as you. You know, that's something you hear a lot from entrepreneurs, like their family, their spouse, or whatever doesn't really understand because by definition, an entrepreneur is somebody who does something, creates something, that wasn't there to begin with, and so like this power of community, like people that are sort of on similar paths than you are at a different place. Maybe they're farther along that path, or maybe they're not as far. Whatever it is, I think that's really powerful for people because it shows you that that whatever this thing is, you're not alone. And you don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. I mean, you can build the wheel in your own unique style, but there are other people out there that you can learn from and that you can share with, and I think that's incredibly powerful.
Thank you. It is. And also when you get to hear stories from others and going more deep, where it was women speaking about, again, miscarriages and toxic relationships, abuse of men hitting them, you know, um, human trafficking, that you're like, what, you went through that, you're going through that. And, you know, it connects us and it
Yep.
reminds us that you can still push through, because that's also where I feel that when you feel alone or you don't feel heard or seen, it affects your mental health, right? And that makes you do crazy stuff or
Mm,
things that you don't even or ever picture yourself doing. And having that support system in that community was also the foundation of it, because I've always felt people will come to me like as a therapist, right?
yep.
Of just talking and venting with me. And I love that. But then that also going back to community, it's the power of community. And I've heard that small towns or small cities don't have that. And it's
Mm,
so needed because, yeah, like entrepreneurs, like if you don't have that supportive spouse at home or that understands, you need that support somewhere else, or
right.
somebody that can encourage you and be like, maybe she doesn't understand because she's not in that path. It doesn't mean she's not meant to be with you,
Right.
because men, you're supposed to surround yourself with people who are, so it can uplift you and maybe you can change your perspective in your relationship. So there's so many ways to tackle it, I feel. But mainly like that community building is so important. And that was like my mission, because I wanted to, and I needed it too.
Mm,
I needed to know that even though I could do it all, I don't have to, and I don't want to.
yep. Well, I think what I appreciate the most about this is like you're trying to empower women to help women. Like you're having this conversation. What's a good way to say this? Like I feel like when it comes to men and women, empowering one side is not disempowering the other side, and there's way too much of that going on these days. Like you have these men's groups, especially when it comes to dating. You had like the men's groups or whatever who like say, "Oh, it's all the woman's fault," and they do this, and then you had the women who say the same thing about the men. But like, I think the only way to become better as a group, as a gender, is to have the conversations within. So like women help other women, men help other men. I think that's the only way to do it. I mean, like how else would it be? How else would it be?
I
Like,
love that. And I'm glad you touch on that, because that's actually a topic that we just discussed recently on Taboo. And I feel that it's important because, like, in a relationship, whether you're dating or you're married or you're
mhm,
just talking to someone or you're single, right?
yep,
Always tend to blame the other person, right? Like, and I get it. Like when they cheat, they cheat. You didn't cheat. It's not
right,
your fault. But then it's also us comparing ourselves and feeling we're not good enough. And then we keep bringing those same trauma, those same heartbreaks without healing to the next person,
yep,
right? Or we don't sit down and tell them our visions of like, this is what I want to do. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm I'm gonna work from this time to this time, but knowing that if you work from that time to this time, the only thing I want is comfort, right? So maybe then dedicate understanding me that those 2 hours at night are mine. So it's
mm,
kind of like balancing those roles that I feel as women and men, it's such a hard time because we are constantly like changing roles,
right,
right? As a woman, whether you have to cook and you have to be with the kids or clean the house or run your career, and as a man, you have to bring the money and you have to, go take care of your car. You have to work. You have to do so many other things that women don't do, that when we don't understand each other, it makes things harder. So when you have a
mm,
community, but not just a community, is to empower you. Not another
yep,
one's gonna be like, yeah, leave her. Oh yeah, she's not worth it. It's really like digging deep and helping us heal in the process, but then understanding each other to build us to be
mm,
better. And I think
yeah,
that's important. So I love that you mentioned that.
man. And I 100% believe that you always got to be careful with these conversations, man. But I,
Yeah.
I 100% believe that like there are certain things that, for the most part, speaking in general here, for the most part, in relationships, men will be sort of more equipped or more fulfilled if they take on certain roles, and women will be, more fulfilled if they take on certain roles. But like, I think what's going on, man, is like, even though that's true, and even though I do believe that, I think that like people are starving on both sides, both men and women. They are starving to be completely accepted by the person that they love. Like they just want the person to like say, these are my positive traits, these are my negative traits, this is what I think. And like there's way too much, to go back to the acting thing, there's way too much of us like trying to play a character in these relationships. And it's like, there's no communication, there's no vulnerability, there's no openness, there's just like, I'm supposed to do this because, and then it's like, well, it's hard to even have that conversation with a partner, because it's like, well, if you're a woman, it's like, what are my girls going to think if I do this? And it's like, if you're a man, like, what are my boys going to think if I do this? But it's like, who says it's supposed to be anything other than what the two of you, or whoever's in the relationship, who says it's supposed to be anything other than that? Like,
I
is
agree.
that not what the relationship is you're talking to this person and you have some sort of agreement or some sort of understanding about what, I don't know, man. I think that people are just like, it's just that they're starving for that. And I think, this sort of culture, this online culture of like men, they're like these, what do they call it, the red pill community or whatever, like where these men blame everything on the women, and then there's these women communities where they blame everything on the men. That's
Mhm.
not doing anything. That's not doing anything to help anything. You know?
No, no, it's true. And it's the same thing now. This reminding me of, there was this post of a woman, like everything we see is reels of motherhood, bashing. I hate being a mom. My God, these kids don't leave me alone. And somebody made this comment that says, why instead of every single reel that I've come across, it's hating being a mom, it's teaching others the process of the good things about being a mom
Mm,
and the bad stuff, right? And that's the same thing with being in a relationship. I
yep.
feel like we're constantly blaming the other person. They're not good enough. They're not doing this. They don't listen to me. Doesn't bring me flowers. He doesn't do this. But also, what do you do? And also, is there any communication piece? And I feel that
Mm,
now with, I love, you nailed it, social media, society, right? It's taken that away from us,
yep.
And I was in the podcast recently, and it was this guy, and he has a wife and they have kids, and he's like, you know what, Jeanette, was such an eye opener because my role is I'm a provider. I want to provide, right? And I don't consider that my wife has multiple titles of having to work because she wants to. She doesn't have to with me, but she wants to,
Hmm.
having to raise kids, have the house clean, take them to soccer, take them to this. So it made him realize that, yes, I appreciate her, but now even more. But also because that's the agreement they came to. They
Right.
understand each other, right? In a lot of relationships, they don't. It's like, I'm a housewife. Well, I don't want to be a housewife, right? And it's that constant fight of, even on social media, is bashing each other. Oh,
Mm,
because you have a man that it's rich, right? Or why we come to that of like, why do you have to have this life and I have to have this one? Like you said, it's among two people, right? It's like, this is what you guys want to do, and that has to be okay with it. And we get sidetracked because of what we see online. Well, you're not good enough because they brought flowers to this person and not to my man doesn't bring me flowers.
yep.
And I feel that's the constant comparison too that doesn't let us have a fulfilled life or relationship over. And
Mm,
I've seen so many people single for that reason too. When you ask them this, I haven't found the one, right? Why? Oh, because they don't listen to me, or they work too much, or they don't know that my gesture is gifts. Have you tried communicating with them? Have you tried
right.
talking about it? Or are you intentional when you're finding these relationships on that? That's a difference too.
Man,
I'm not like a relationship expert. It's just my feedback because I've seen it, I've been through it, and it's the feedback that I get a lot from a lot of the girls around me. And man, oh gosh, the
yeah.
street horrible. But why you say that? Like, I'm not horrible, right? So it's like, it's not horrible. It's just, what are you looking for? And are you being
Mm.
intentional with that as well?
Well, I mean, I think you're right though, and I think like communication is such a crazy word, man, because I think that we think when we're communicating, we're just saying the words to the person, but like I think that when we say we love a person, like the verb loving that person is showing that person love in the way that they express to us that they need to be loved, regardless if we see any value in it or not. So,
Yeah.
like, if you think about something simple that, like, I don't know, if you do XYZ, that shows me that you love me. Like,
Yeah.
a simple example would be, I don't know, something simple. If you take your shoes off at the door when you come in, whatever it is, like whatever it is. But it's like these little simple things, man. They might not mean anything to us, but if they mean something to the partner, and we do those things, that is us loving the partner, because that shows them that we care about, first of all, we care about them. We're listening to what it is that they say to us when they say, hey, when you do this thing, it makes me feel loved or whatever. And so it's like, I think that's a big part of communication that's missing. We just like, we're talking to the person, we say the words, we hear the words that they say, but then we're not fully understanding what it is that they say and then using that going forward. You know,
Yeah.
it's just like, I don't know, man. I've experienced, personally, I've experienced several situations where it's like, just because this person didn't see a value in what it was that I was saying that meant something to me, it was like, oh, well, that I don't see the value in it, so it must be worthless or dumb to do. But it's
Yeah.
like, if you're listening to your partner and they're telling you these things and you do that, that is, I feel like, the verb love. Because again, going back way in earlier in the conversation, love could mean anything to anybody. It means something different to everybody. And so I think it's just being receptive to what that person is telling you that love means to them.
Yeah. And like to me, I go with actions speak louder than words,
Yeah.
right? It's like saying I love you and then not showing up, not giving
Mm,
you a hug, not just overall reminding you of, I care for you, I'm here for you, how can I
right.
support you? Like those little things that go a long way. And I agree with you. It could be as simple as take off your shoes, throw away the garbage, just a random hug. But it goes a lot into like, I feel like we also live in such a self-centered life
Mm,
about me, 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 me. And this goes for both, right? About what can I do? Where do I need to get to the next
yep.
level? Where am I heading? But it's not about where are we heading,
Mm,
especially in a relationship, or what am I trying to look in a spouse so I can attract them? Because I'm a believer on that too. It's knowing where you're heading, but then also in all fulfillments of life. It could be in your career, in a relationship, with your kids, if you want kids, if you don't, like if you want a man that wants kids or they don't, like having all those some foundations in place so then you can find that fulfillment too and stop looking for it everywhere else and know like this is where I stand for. And I'm hoping now I can meet the person that I'm attracting with those intentions, if that makes sense.
yeah. Yeah, for sure it does. Listen, man, I don't want to take up too much more of your time.
It's been amazing. No, thank you.
Yeah, yeah, it really has. Where, so I know you mentioned a couple Facebook groups. Do you have the names or social media's website or anything?
Yeah, so my Instagram is I am Jeanette Miranda,
Okay.
Facebook Jeanette Miranda, and then I have Women Empowerments rooted in her Facebook group. And then we have the Taboo Talks Latina Edition YouTube, and then we also have our Instagram handle, the
Okay.
same.
Okay. And you might have sent this to me. If you haven't, if you do send it, if I have it, I'll put it in the descriptions. Um, So one thing I ask everybody before we close, if you could share one of the most important lessons you ever learned, and this could be from your personal life, if you're comfortable sharing it, or your career, what do you think is one of the
That
most
was
valuable
a
lessons?
good question. It got me thinking a lot. And one of the most valuable lessons I've learned is that I don't have to shrink myself to be accepted or to fit into someone else's version of success.
Hmm.
Because, like I mentioned to you, for a long time, I believe I had to fulfilled what other people expected from me, either culture expectations, society expectations, even like my own fears of getting in the way of me accomplishing something. So the moment I gave myself permission to own my stories, that was the moment I actually like embraced it. My flaws of like my lashes, right? Understanding that nothing out there is going to fulfill that hole of what I'm capable of achieving or that confident within me. And also living in alignment with who God created me to be. You know,
Hmm.
I think that's a powerful reminder of you're already perfect. You just have to know that even though you were created perfect, right, by God, it's not, you're going to make mistakes and you're going to learn along the way, but keeping in mind that you have to live the best version of yourself, that what's perfect to you, right? And understanding that we only get to live one life. So to me, that was like my most valuable lesson is just learning not to shrink for anyone and really embracing who I am.
Hmm. Man, that's powerful. You were created to be who you're supposed to be. Like, you were created as this person.
Yeah.
That's powerful. Yeah, I like that.
Thank you.
Look, it's been really great talking to you. I'm gonna let you get out of here. If you can hang out for just a second, I'll explain to you how I upload all this stuff. But I do appreciate it.
Of course. No, thank you for having me.
Hey guys, I really appreciate everybody tuning in today. If you found this content or this episode useful and intriguing, you can visit us on social media. This is Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Rumble, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple and Google Podcasts. Pure Wisdom Podcast on all social medias. You can interact with us, follow, like, and share there, and we will see you guys next time.